I pulled the letter from the mailbox and froze. My hands shook, and I couldn't breathe. Not because of the paper itself, but because I already knew. I had seen the signs, felt the lies, but nothing prepared me for the proof tucked between these folds. It was from her. He had been giving her everything I thought was ours, and now, finally, the truth was in my hands. I didn't even hesitate. I brought it inside, closed the door behind me, and sat at the edge of the kitchen table with my heart hammering like a frantic drum. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing at all, but what I pulled from the envelope shattered what I thought I knew about us. It was from her. She had written every detail, every excuse, every little moment I had missed. Dates, dinners, laughter that wasn't mine. And in the corner, almost shyly, a small confession. He had told her everything I'd ever told him, my secrets, my dreams, my vulnerabilities. I could feel a tremor run down my spine, not just from betrayal, but from the intimacy that had been stolen and handed to someone else. I remember sitting there, the envelope crumpled in my hands, tasting the sharp tang of betrayal like bitter coffee. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator, the sound suddenly unbearable. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood of the table, trying to breathe through the shock, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. For weeks I had caught the signs. The late-night calls, the unexplained absences, the faint perfume that didn't belong to me lingering on his coat. But I had been too hopeful, too willing to believe in his words over the truth that was staring me in the face. I thought love meant blind trust, but now I realized that love sometimes meant seeing clearly, even when it hurts. I didn't plot in rage. There was no screaming, no confrontation. I planned with a calm that surprised even me. Every day I walked through our apartment, every glance I gave him, every word I spoke was measured. He never suspected. He didn't know that I had the letter, that I had seen him, that I had felt the hollow ache of betrayal press against my chest like a storm cloud waiting to burst. The first part of my plan was subtle. Small public truths slipped into conversation, hints that others could pick up on. I made casual references to honesty, integrity, trust. I asked questions in the presence of friends about fidelity, about commitment, about what people would do if promises were broken. And he stumbled over every one, a deer caught in the headlights of his own lies. The humiliation was gentle, public, but precise. He never suspected me, not yet. There was a moment I remember vividly. We were at a small dinner party, his friends and mine mingling, laughter flowing around us like champagne. He reached for my hand, brushing against mine lightly. I didn't pull away, though my mind was racing. The contact was ordinary to him, tender even, but to me, it was a reminder of everything he had done. I let him feel that ordinary connection because it made the eventual reveal all the more potent. Intimacy carries weight, and I was learning how to use it with subtlety, like a quiet note before the crescendo. I started preparing for the final act months before it happened. I didn't need him to beg or to fight. I needed him to see, to feel the gravity of his choices in front of everyone who mattered. I wanted my revenge to be graceful, elegant, and devastating in its simplicity. The day arrived like any other. A casual gathering at my parents' home, friends flowing in, the air warm with laughter, and the scent of food baking in the oven. He arrived on time, confident, unaware. I wore a dress that made me feel strong, not seductive, just unshakable. I carried the letter with me, tucked carefully in my purse. I had rehearsed the moment in my head countless times, imagining the shock, the regret, the disbelief on his face, but never in a way that made me cruel. I wanted him to witness the consequences of his choices, not suffer from my hand. It started with a toast. I stood, glass in hand, voice calm but firm. I spoke of honesty, of the fragile beauty of trust, of the invisible threads that bind people together. I talked about love that endures, about promises, and about the quiet ways betrayal can creep in. All the while, his eyes darted nervously around the room. I could see the subtle tension in his jaw, the small hitch in his breath when I glanced in his direction. Then I reached into my purse. Slowly, deliberately, I held up the envelope. The guests murmured, curiosity flashing in their eyes. He froze, his hand midway to a drink, and that was the moment I had been waiting for. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I simply slid the envelope across the table, letting it rest where everyone could see it. "This was meant for no one," I said, my voice steady. "But sometimes the truth refuses to stay hidden." The room went quiet. The murmurs stopped. He picked up the envelope with trembling hands, realizing that the secret he had carried, the lies he had spun so effortlessly, were now on display. He opened it slowly, his eyes scanning the words, the careful details, the proof of everything he had thought he could hide. And as he read, his confident mask crumbled. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream or cry. I just stood, letting the silence stretch, letting him feel the weight of his own choices. The people around us whispered, exchanging glances, the social atmosphere thick with the tension of revelation. He tried to speak, but words failed him. He looked at me, finally, and I saw the fleeting glimpse of shame, of regret, of understanding that this woman, the one he thought he could manipulate, had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. The envelope went untouched after that. I walked away from him in front of everyone, letting him sit with the consequences of his actions. There was no drama beyond that moment, no fights, no shouting matches. The victory was quiet, elegant, and absolute. I reclaimed my space, my dignity, my power, and in that moment, I realized something important. Revenge is sweetest when it's measured, when it's calm, when it's wrapped in grace rather than chaos. I didn't need to see him grovel. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need the satisfaction of watching him crumble completely. What I needed was closure, and the closure came in walking away, head held high, letting the world see the truth without me having to shout it from the rooftops. After that night, I changed. Not in a dramatic way, not with overt displays, but subtly, quietly. I became more attentive to myself, more present in my life. I pursued passions I had shelved, friendships I had neglected, dreams I had put on hold. And somewhere in the midst of rebuilding, I found a peace I had thought was impossible when I first discovered the letter. There were moments when I thought about him, when the ache of betrayal flared unexpectedly, but it was always tempered by the memory of that night. The night when I stood in my own strength, when I chose to be public but graceful, when I let him see the consequences of his choices without me stooping to anger or revenge that would have cheapened the moment. And sometimes when I catch myself smiling at a small victory, a promotion, a friendship rekindled, a dream realized, I remember that it started with that letter. That one piece of paper, innocent on the surface, holding the truth that would set everything in motion, and I'm grateful for it, because it forced me to see clearly, to act deliberately, to reclaim myself. I still carry a small piece of that night with me, tucked in the corners of memory where it feels safe and powerful. Not bitterness, not anger, just clarity and strength. And every time I pass a mailbox, I think about how something so small, so ordinary, can change the course of a life. How something hidden, when revealed, can heal instead of destroy. I never wanted him to suffer in the way he might have imagined. I wanted him to see, to understand, and to acknowledge the truth. And in doing that, I found something far more valuable than vengeance. I found myself. I walk through life now with the quiet confidence of someone who has been broken and has rebuilt herself stronger than ever. And the letter? I kept it, not as a weapon, but as a reminder. A reminder that pain can be transformed into power, that betrayal can teach, and that the most graceful revenge is the one that allows you to rise above. When he left that night, his friends and mine looked at me with something between awe and respect. I could feel it without needing their words. I had taken a situation that could have destroyed me and turned it into a lesson, a public yet graceful reclaiming of everything that was mine. And in that moment, I realized that true revenge doesn't always leave someone in ruins. Sometimes it just leaves them watching you shine, and that is more than enough. I went to bed that night with a strange kind of calm. The letter lay in my drawer, untouched, yet fully read, fully understood. And as I drifted into sleep, I realized that the most powerful moment of all was not the exposure itself, but the quiet aftermath. The knowledge that I had survived, that I had reclaimed myself, and that I was free. I still think about him sometimes, as people do, but the thought carries no weight, no anger, no pain, no longing. Just the memory of a lesson learned the hard way, and the satisfaction of knowing that I did not break. I healed, I grew, and the world watched me do it, quietly, elegantly, unshakable. Because sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't loud, it doesn't humiliate or shame, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It shows up in your confidence, your composure, your reclaimed joy. And when it's done in public gracefully, it leaves no doubt you are whole, you are strong, you are untouchable, and that, I've learned, is the sweetest ending of all.